And we're back on another exciting episode of Starfleet Point, where we have a casual and informal discussion about Star Trek. Oh, I hate this. Always happens to me. It's like after 100 episodes. By the way, I've surpassed 100 episodes. Sean, welcome back. Hello.
Congratulations and hello.
A few episodes ago, I made it to 100 episodes of Starfleet Voice. So yay! Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to the Academy and to everyone. And as usual, I start off all over the place. Well, it's been a while. I haven't seen you in about 3 weeks. And audience, I apologize. I haven't seen. Normally, I've got episodes banked so I can just chill and life happens and I can still release an episode. But this is the first time where I was like completely caught up and up to date and did not have anything banked for the future. So Starfleet Boy took an unplanned 3-week hiatus because we were moving from our previous assignment at Starbase 11 to Starbase 47, which is where we are now. I don't know.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah, well, I mean, I would have gone to the Yorktown, to be honest, but
our Yorktown station is pretty awesome. Which did you see that thing? I don't know where. I think I sent it to you on our Twitter thing, where the Yorktown uniforms are very similar to the Discovery.
Yeah, they are. I mean,
uniforms.
They are similar and they are dissimilar in the sense that uniform is going to be a Starfleet uniform.
Yeah, it's true. And the Yorktown ones look more like this anyways. And speaking of uniforms, I'm wearing one today thanks to Gary of Tracker Prize. So I'm now be dressed every time. This has been a fantasy of mine because I used to watch Gary's be like, wow, he's got like his science uniform on. And so now I've got my science uniform on. So I feel talk about technobabble and faux science and all that good stuff, or future science, I should say.
Now you have to amaze us with some scientific technobabble. Come on.
I've got a couple of thoughts for this episode. I guess we'll get started. Once again, I've written down my episode summary in the hopes that it won't drag on for like 7 years. So the episode, do you know how to pronounce it, Sean? It's Civis Pacem Parabellum.
Yeah, I forget if it's vis or vis, but Civis Pacem Parabellum, something like that.
Sounds way cooler than what I just said.
Yeah, I said it right in my episode review because I went and actually looked it up. I was like, what the hell? I don't speak Latin, so I went to check that out, and I can't remember it now though.
But I think I learned from your video that it means to have peace, prepare for war, or something like that.
Yeah.
Civis Pacem Parabellum, blah blah blah. I just have been saying Civis Pahahaha all week, so that's what I'm going to say for this. So we come to it at last, the mid-season finale of Star Trek Discovery, or the end of Chapter 1, as the show would have us call it. Everything starts off routine as the Discovery desperately tries to save the Gagarin from destruction and fails in a not-so-bad battle, except for the wrongness of the Klingon ships. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, the Federation realized that a giant naturally occurring antenna on a planet called Pahvo is the answer to all their problems with the Klingons' cloaking technology. So if the transmitter can be reconfigured to send out a different frequency, it can act like a sonar, revealing the position of every cloaked ship in the entire quadrant. It's pretty impressive, science-wise. So Burnham, Saru, and Tyler have been dispatched to complete the mission when they discovered that Pahvo is not uninhabited but in fact there's an advanced species and the Pahvans exist in a kind of non-corporeal state, and they look a lot like the spores in the spore drive, actually, but there's no relation to them. So anyways, they seem to be quite friendly. Oh wow, Siri just went on, which is, I must have said something that sounds like Siri. It's that bad Siri. It's like Siri's like what I imagine. Siri's like what I imagine Bob is like. I don't know who Bob is. I still don't know Bob, but Siri, just something about Siri and Bob seems similar. But
down, Siri, down.
Yeah. Anyways, they seem pretty friendly, but then and they even try to help poor Saru, who is going mad from the constant sound that's emanating from the planet, or that naturally occurring transmitter. But unfortunately, this leads to Saru flipping out completely and endangering the mission that the away team was set to do. Fortunately, Burnham and Tyler have their eyes on the ball, I guess, and they concoct a plan to distract Saru, and it almost works, except that crazy lying Saru decides to meld with Tyler through an emerald that is conveniently given to him by the Pahvans. And so in a race to the finish, Saru attempts to destroy the signal augmentation that Burnham puts in place, but not before the Pahvans intervene and ask Saru to quit with the paranoia. The Pahvans, who are probably weirded out completely, repair the transmitter, allowing the away team to make contact with the Discovery, but it's not as we thought. After the crew beam away, the Pahvans start broadcasting a message to the Klingons, forcing a conflict with the Discovery. Mm-hmm. Do you think I think that's a good summary.
In an interesting way, it is. I wouldn't necessarily call it a part one because the episode does work on itself. It's just it also works simultaneously as a setup to the actual season, the mid-season finale.
I would say yes. Getting right into the discussion, should we start with things that I loved or that we loved, or things that we hated first? Should we start with the bad things first or the good things first?
That's your call, Mr. Host.
All right, I'm gonna say let's start with the bad, because that way at least we can end on a good note. So I normally don't do this, but I did watch your video, so I saw some of the things that you pointed out, and I agree with pretty much everything that you said. Like all the blue, there's just so much. Everything was just blue, and I really enjoyed the examples that you pointed out. Not to Sean, but everyone go check out Trek on the Tube, because even like I consider myself like, I don't really need to watch supplementary material, but I really enjoy watching your stuff, because I was like, oh yeah, like the production team could have just changed it to like orange or pink or yellow, even, anything. Like, it's just surprising to me that they don't notice how much blue, speaking of blue, is on the show, and it's a lot.
It's interesting because it would seem they just kind of colorized the trees, or everything that was green essentially on the planet. They filmed that in Toronto, or somewhere near Toronto, I think. Everything that was green, they just colorized it blue, and maybe it was easier to go from green to blue. But they could have even made it purple, and it would have changed.
If there's anyone out there in the visual effects industry, particularly in digital effects, and if you happen to be watching this, we would love to know, is it just easy? Because I actually have noticed that generally in like the world of like, okay, this is, again, I hate this because it sounds like a jab at Discovery, but in the world of like second grade or like cheaper or on the budget special effects, there tends to be a lot of blue. Like, so I wonder if blue is just like something that is easy to do, like you said. So that would be something interesting to find out.
It isn't necessarily a jab at the episode itself. It's more a general complaint that I have about Discovery. It is nitpicking because I could argue that maybe Enterprise is also quite blue in its tones. Most necessarily the tone of the ship, but when you go to an alien ship in Enterprise, they try to make it feel alien, so everything is green or orange or
some other color.
Some other color, which kind of takes you away from what you're used to. And I think having the alien planet being a completely different color would have been very interesting. Even a color that isn't natural for us. I don't know, but
I remember reading somewhere I had this is kind of like, I don't know if I'm making this up or if it's like something I remember, but I remember a little factoid that came out that the most ubiquitous colors in the universe, according to whatever this stuff our scientists have, are aqua, like a blue-green color. So maybe the team at Discovery are just like, hey, it's it's the most ubiquitous color, like, you know what I'm saying?
too much credit, to be honest.
It's possible. It's possible.
Because I mean, even the Pahvans, which are corporeal life forms. Okay, I'm going to criticize Discovery simply because it's made in 2017. When you look at non-corporeal life forms in TNG or in the original series, they tend to be like...
Oh, we didn't hear you. Gold, though, you were going to say, I think, right? Like a golden kind of hue. Are you still there?
No.
Hello.
White. TNG.
Oh, white, yeah.
TNG is usually like a white kind of light, as if it were like maybe a lens flare or something just shining, and then they just put around whatever.
I gotcha, yeah, it's true.
But it is, I mean, we're talking about either 60s production value or 80s to 90s production value, which is time 2017. I think you can pretty much, if you can deliver a ship that looks like the Discovery and the sarcophagus ship, I think you can do whatever you want when it comes to form. And I found it interesting that they chose to make it just blue, except this time be more. Yeah, it's interesting that they chose to go with blue again.
You cut out a lot just now, which we often have. This isn't not the first time. This happens a lot on Starfleet Boy, especially with Gary, who's across the pond. So maybe try adjust. I'm also going to try adjusting my bandwidth and limit it a little bit just to see if it's just in general. Maybe I'm over. Whoa! Did you see that? The camera zoomed in on me.
I see that.
Wow.
Is that because did you just change your settings?
I did change my settings.
Hear me? Am I cutting out?
Yeah, no, you actually sound a lot better. Maybe I was the one overloading the.
Okay.
Google, you can't handle gigabit internet. What?
God damn it, Google.
Hey Siri. No, I'm just kidding. It's just totally
self-pilot.
It's just totally
Google makes self-piloting cars and then they can't handle the conversation, right?
So to reiterate your point, sort of, it's just like you were saying basically that we're in 2017 and audiences expect more, so kind of
audiences
spend the money
more, and we kind of just know that more can be done. So to have everything come out as blue particles is interesting.
Here's an example of what you might have seen in Star Trek: The Original Series when you were given a non-corporeal life form, which actually I think is quite brilliant. Do you remember they would just be like walls of different color with sparkles and they would move towards you and stuff like that? So
it's very creative. In a time where they had no budget and virtually no technology for this kind of thing, they were very creative.
It's true. You'll notice that in my episode summary, I did not mention the L'Rell Klingon subplot at all. That's because it's one of the things I didn't really care for about this episode. I didn't really see that it was going anywhere. I thought one of the things that really annoyed me about it was when she electrocutes the admiral, she's still holding the admiral. So it's weird that she's like totally unaffected by it. Like, you are holding someone that's being electrocuted, you're gonna get electrocuted as well.
True.
It was annoying. Science.
Yeah, no. The subplots of the episode, I think, kind of pulled away from the focus should have been the planet. This is the first time we've actually off the ship, and it was interesting to be off the ship. And maybe if we'd spent more time learning about the Pahvans and how exactly or why exactly they affected Saru in that way, it might have been more interesting.
There was definitely something that felt rushed about it and last minute. Like I felt like, when did the Admiral get captured? It was like 3 episodes ago or 2 episodes ago, right?
I couldn't tell you. That's starting to.
They could
That's
have
way back for me now.
They could have sprinkled in, little bits of all this kind of subplot in previous episodes, I feel like. And that way, in fact, we would have gotten more time with the Pahvans and I think it would have been more impactful if we suddenly had the Klingons. That whole thing at the end would have been more impactful if you didn't expect that was going to happen somehow anyways. Like the whole time I was watching the episode, I just knew, I was like, oh, at some point and and the Discovery are going to meet at the end of this episode. So that was something that was kind of like, okay, well, and again, just none of it really made sense. Like I thought Cole was really strange how he was like humoring her, and then at the very end he even like gives her paint. All of a sudden he's like, oh, did you think that I wouldn't notice your lies or your subterfuge or whatever? And then he says, let's show her what we do with traitors or liars or whatever. And it's just like kind of bizarre. It's like there's no depth to Cole. Like Cole's an interesting character actually to me, but he's also not utilized, I think, fully as he could be. He's very two-dimensional, and
yeah, that's all the Klingons on the show, I find.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm sorry to be like this, but I think the Klingon plot and everything that revolves around the Klingons ended up being the weakest of everything Discovery related. I think the characters that we have on Discovery are as much antagonists as protagonists, and that makes them very interesting. And I think just the show could have been about the Discovery itself and everything shady that's going on
exactly
on the ship, and that would have been just as interesting as having these kind of clunky, stupid to some certain extent Klingons that don't really seem like masters of war or tacticians, or I mean even L'Rell, which is L'Rell knows how to make prisoners talk, right? All she ends up doing is, I mean, she just tortures, and that's it.
Totally true. I have to give credit.
I mean, modern military say that torture is not a good way of extracting information. So
yeah, like in 2017, we should know, based on 2017 knowledge, we should come up with cooler ways. Again, Star Trek Next Generation took place when people still thought torturing was cool, but anymore. So let's have like a machine extract it from your mind, which seems a little bit more sci-fi to me.
To quote the most prominent torture moment of TNG, there are 4 lights.
Yes,
that whole thing, the whole, because Picard's captured we only see that for 1 episode. I think it is. It's a 2-parter, but he's only captured for 1 episode. It has so much more depth than anything you could even imagine the Klingons doing in Discovery.
Yeah. I'm totally getting bummed out, but but we must trek on, as they say. There's a guy on Twitter, David Oakes, and his handle is Kotozero, Kotowzero, and he wrote a comment to another like Twitter thread. And he said that the Klingons on Discovery are basically like Pakleds. And so I was like, when you said they seem stupid, it's true. They definitely do seem more like the Pakleds than what we would expect Klingons to be like. And I
they're crossbreed. They're like Pakleds crossed with Kazons.
That's so yeah, the whole Klingon subplot, and then the Admiral we're meant to believe that the Admiral's dead, but I never believed it. In fact, when we find out later in part 2, but in part 2 when she's alive, I was like, oh, no surprise. And again, it was not something surprising
in
at all.
Discovery's defense, I don't think they tried to make you believe she was dead.
Okay. I thought
Didn't get that vibe at all. It's not. Sometimes there are, I mean, cheaply produced TV shows where you're like, okay, I saw that coming. It's like, I see what you're doing here. This I didn't feel. This I just felt like, oh, she's captured. You know.
well, so Laurel, I don't know. I guess maybe that's my problem, is that Laurel just doesn't. It doesn't seem like Laurel had any kind of idea what she was doing, and
The only
I
Klingon
don't know.
character that has any kind of drive is Takuvma. He knows.
And
He
he's dead.
clearly knows what he's doing. He has, to some certain extent, an honorable goal. And he had a mission, and then he dies, and you're left with pretty much two useless followers, and some other guy that's
completely useless. You're
some
right.
other guy that's egotistical, and it seems to be in the position that he's at just because he was at the right place at the right time, not because he's the fearless Klingon leader or tactician, mastermind, or whatever. So yeah,
Exactly.
Chris Obi, great. I mean, amazing actor. Shout out to him for bringing to life one of the most amazing Klingons I've ever seen, with only 2 episodes of presence. And then all the rest pales in comparison. Until wait for it, next week's episode. But
the other thing I thought that was kind of abrupt was we go from groovy Stamets back to grumpy Stamets, and I just thought it was like, well, couldn't there have been a balance? Like, could he have been differently? Like, why is his default either? Why does he have to go from being like super snippety and kind of snappy, and goes to being really groovy and like happy and like hopeful? Just reverts back to this when I didn't really buy it. I don't know.
It's
I
just
didn't think that
awkwardly presented.
Yeah. And then the other thing I found out from Twitter was that apparently there was a scene with Dr. Culber that was cut out of this episode. So it did feel that way too. It was just like there were kind of, again, I don't understand why they have to. It's like the show's not on television. There's no time restraint. Like, make it an hour long, or like, or if one week it's a little shorter, fine. But like, you really don't have a time restriction. Like, why are you cutting things that could be great developmentally? So I just thought that was like a strange thing also, and a little disheartening, because it makes me wonder, like, does CBS now, like, this is how like how mistrusting I am of CBS, but are they actually going to probably release it later on actual television?
Well, we're getting it in on TV in
that's
Canada.
right. I forgot about that in Canada.
So maybe
that's why it's cut that way.
It is one country in the entire. I mean, Netflix is covering what, over like 100. Is it 140 countries or something?
Yeah, it's everywhere except the United States. It's on Netflix.
In Canada, and so why does it need to be on TV anywhere at all?
It is a little strange. And
I know people get frustrated when certain TV shows coming out on Netflix give us, because there are certain TV shows you'll watch just 40 to 45 minutes. Sometimes you get 35, 32-minute episodes, and that gets people frustrated because it feels short. But then you get 1 hour finales, and then you get, some episodes even go to an hour and 10 minutes. And I don't mind having a 30 to 35-minute episode. Give us a 30. If you've only got that much to say about said planet, only say that much about said planet. And as you said, those little elements that don't necessarily need to be fed into this episode could have been added to other episodes, and maybe have those episodes run a little longer. To the coherence of the show, then it really has no problem. But maybe they want to adhere to that 48-minute.
It's possible.
Space Canada.
Canada. Which, by the way, I must say
Canada.
that I'm very impressed with your country and countrymen because of the recent public apology for what Canada did to during the Cold War, and like that's pretty cool. I've never even, it's unimaginable that a country a representative of,
I can't take any credit whatsoever for that because I am not at all Canadian as it
that's right,
stands.
I
I
know,
am
but that's
French
where
and New Zealand and Kiwi, so
but that's where you reside. That's where you
that's where I
reside.
live currently. Yeah,
So that's why I said your adopted country
yeah.
it did a good thing.
Hopefully one day, but
Um, let's see, and then the last thing, and then we can move on from the things that I thought, unless you have more to add. But Saru
no,
flipping
no.
out was also out of left field, and it didn't really fit his character. And I thought, like,
Mm.
to me, I wondered, well, are the Pahvans somehow responsible for this? Is he possessed? Like, it was so unclear to me, like, what was going on. And then his
Mm.
like it just didn't seem like the motivation was there. Like, he's a Starfleet officer. Up until now, he's been like on the up and up. And I don't care how afraid you are, if all of a sudden your fear is lifted. I don't think your response would be to lie and like hurt. I think your response would be to not be afraid. He seemed more afraid than, when the
Yeah.
Pahvin supposedly lifted away his fear. Then, so it just didn't seem like there was an understanding of what the emotion of fear and the lack of fear is. Like, we've all felt fear, so who's writing this?
Yes, Saru is a peculiar element on the show. I honestly thought he would be the most interesting thing on the show before it began. Clearly not. Of the most uninteresting characters. And it's because I think instead of they present him as weak in the beginning and want to show us that there's more to him, etc. But you need to pay that off. You can't just throw yourself straight into that. They should have left him exactly as he is, grow or develop season one, so that when he starts growing and developing, and when he starts going through changes, becoming kind of better as a being, then it has impact. And then you can throw in an episode where it throws him completely out of whack, and it would resemble in the same way Data can't handle emotions. I don't know. It would have more impact. It just felt kind of awkward and forced here.
I agree.
And yes, we don't really understand. I mean, going back and looking at it, okay, I understand. It's just he doesn't know how to handle never being afraid. It's all. I mean, it's up to interpretation, isn't it?
I guess so, but also just on another level, it's like we're introduced to Saru, and he's a very like unconfident but aspiring to be a leader. He's aspiring to be in command, and he's a little miffed because he loses out to Burnham, who is so confident in the beginning of the series, and so like, she's just like, I know everything, and I'm not, I'm not afraid to make the decisions. And Saru is the opposite, where he's ready to run away from things, even, and that's why Captain Giorgio doesn't choose him. She realizes that he still needs development. And then we see him on the Discovery, and he's changed a little, and you start to see a little more confidence, and he's even like, Burnham, I'm not going to let the same thing happen to my captain that you let happen to your captain. And it's kind of awesome. Like, you're like, oh, this is a neat little conflict. And then he has that moment with the computer where he's like, and I think that's where for me it was like, okay, well, that's good. It's like, all right to have this moment where he's just kind of like reverting back to his way. But here he doesn't just revert back to his way. Like, he just gets worse like than he's ever been. He even, and like I'm kind of tired of him just constantly blaming Burnham for anything that goes wrong with him. Like he even says, he's like, Burnham, you just take and you take and you take. It's like, you're a fucking adult. I don't care what species you are. Have a little responsibility for your own actions. You have just as much a say in this. And it's just kind of like, I just don't buy it. Like, I don't think that an adult character of any species, you know, would be
Did you watch Talking Trick?
No, not yet.
Okay, because on Talking Trick, they Matt Myra, I think it's Matt Myra, the host, at one point says, he asked the question, why does Saru all of a sudden talk about Burnham ruined, you know, his chances at becoming, you know, first officer to Georgia? And it really bugged me because he says that as if the issue was an old issue that he brought back. We've spent quite literally 9 episodes of him complaining about that.
That's true.
So why is this old? Why is this something that we bring back? Yeah, when you have an argument, you bring things back from 10 years ago, and all of a sudden they don't have any relevance to what you're saying, but you use that as a kind of a defense mechanism. And I agree that's kind of what they tried to do, but years ago, this is 6 months ago, and ever since they met again, they've every time they interact, it's mostly about that.
Right. And yeah, it's getting old, writers.
It is.
And then another example of like what I thought was just kind of convenient and not very plausible was like how just when, you know, just at the right moment when you know, Saru needs to know, and the Pahvans happen to have given this emerald. You know, up until now, the Pahvans had been they'd been interacting by like melding with him, right? So that's the other thing is like, again, and this goes to like, you know, was it ever filmed? Why is it on the cutting room floor? Why didn't we spend more time on this? But like, let's have a couple more of these meldings with the Pahvans, because he's claiming to have all these conversations with them. And it is clear that this crystal, he doesn't know what it is unless someone tells him about it, right? But we have no context for why it would even come up. Why did they give it to him? Like, did they say, oh, you can share the minds of your friends? You know, it's like, it forces you to use your headcanon to kind of fill in the gaps. And while that's okay, like that's okay to do sometimes, I think in some situations, if you didn't do it, it would seem less lazy. Like, oh, I need to do something here to figure out how, you know, to reveal that Tyler is ill-intentioned here. And the other thing that bothers me is that, let's just say later on that we do find out that Tyler is Voke, then, you know, what the hell kind of technology or brainwashing or magic are the Klingons using that have completely turned this Klingon into a human completely?
Well, saran wrap, as showed by the next episode, but saran wrap,
so
wrap
yeah,
these bridges down, right? But
just a lot. Just those are the main things that irked me about the episode.
Okay. So I did in my episode review, having rewatched it, something triggered me. And essentially Starfleet say that it's explained that the Pahvans have created this crystal, kind of what is it? It's a communications device, so that they can they were essentially looking. Is that it?
Wait, you just totally broke up. Try again.
Try again.
CBS is.
Where did I stop?
CBS has an algorithm for when you're not singing praises for Discovery.
CBS hack the haters, but
I'm not a hater, by the way. Well, I might be considered a hater now.
No. We're
try not
to criticize. This is criticism. Essentially, what I wanted to say is that Starfleet's using this solution before now, on for 6 months, and
Oh yeah.
they already knew that the Klingons had cloaking technology, unless they discovered this planet now. Which would be kind of intriguing because they already said that all of the ships are kind of scripted into war and not discovery at this point. They found the planet now. It's kind of intriguing that they haven't actually done this before, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does make sense. And actually, there's a lot of things about the episode that I don't understand. Like for example, the importance of Pahvo in the first place. Like supposedly it's broadcasting this there's this naturally occurring, which we find out later that it may not be because the Pahvans probably grew it, transmitter. But like, so Starfleet already knows the signal that they need to use to create this sonar effect that's going to reveal the cloaking devices, right? But you're telling me that a planet which more power than like something you can build. I mean, you're talking about like the warp core of a starship alone generates so much power, like, and can't you equip every ship with like a mini, let's call it the Pahvo, or that at least you don't have to like reveal every Klingon ship in the quadrant, but like couldn't you reveal a Klingon ship like a light year? like, so, like, does it have to be that? And so the other thing is, the crew, the away team has to beam in 30 kilometers away from the transmitter because that's the range of its interference. So the power is not that strong. The episode kind of contradicts itself because you would think that if this thing was so powerful and could broadcast a signal such as would reveal every Klingon ship in the quadrant and end this like power of strength or whatever, that you couldn't even come close to the planet without interference or things like that. So what's that?
Sorry. Just the phone.
But those are some of the, I've got my science division shirt on here, so those are some of the things that I didn't understand or that I had questions about because they just seemed like implausible within the context of the show's own science fiction or science that's established in the show. So all that was just really weird. I like that you were like curious about why there was a hut on the planet. I was also curious about that because it would have been neat again if they showed a scene where like the Pahvans are accommodating them and this thing grows out of the ground or something, and like it would have been neat just to say that like this is something they did them. Again, it could have still happened off camera that way, but it just, why not just do a special effect,
The interesting thing is I quite like alien races that are not humanoid. It gives you, it kind of opens your mind to different possibilities. Like this alien race is not even corporeal, which kind of raises the question: if we were to meet a non-corporeal being that arrive on some sort of spacecraft, how the hell are we going to accommodate them on our planet?
Right.
What we need to build, what materials we need to use, if our atmosphere is even all right for them. But and that's based off the fact we know, or in our minds there is a possibility of seeing a non-corporeal being. I'm assuming these non-corporeal being, the Pahvans, have never seen any other race in their existence. So why would they automatically assume that the beings they're going to meet are corporeal? Why are they going to assume they need heat and shelter? I mean, it's kind of, I mean, if it were explained that they are sentient, but they actually scanned the Discovery as it arrived, and they kind of, because that happens all the time on Star Trek. You know, they scan the ship and then they create an environment that resembles, you know, the Old West or whatever, because they found that in our databanks. You know, all right, it's corny, but it still holds up. You know, why is there a hut randomly there with a cool looking heat rock thing in the middle? It was the perfect occasion. Yeah, it was a perfect occasion to show us, to show them using a phaser to heat up rocks too, but they didn't do that. But
they didn't do that either. They must have scanned the Discovery and found someone playing the Ocarina of Time, because it looked like the Na'vi. The Na'vi
village. Another issue I have is why isn't the Enterprise or any other Constitution class on this mission of utmost importance, which is the most important mission in all of Starfleet? Why is the Discovery doing this? The only reason would be they have the spore drive, and I could only justify that by saying they jump in and they jump back out within a few minutes and it's done. And every mission that the Discovery does would be based on that, but they don't. They stick around for however long they need to stick around. The season was about war and the importance of the spore drive. These guys should be jumping from conflict to conflict, helping everyone out, saving everyone, and they should be a threat to the Klingons. They should be fearing this one ship. Like, holy shit, if Starfleet equips all of their ships like this, we're fucked. But no, they just, I don't know. They're constantly on downtime. What are they doing on every? Why are they just sitting there? Why random place in space waiting for their captain to shuttle half a quadrant away? What the hell?
I know they have a spore drive and they're shuttling. It's like, or they have a warp drive and they're shuttling.
I think the writers on the show have a very good grasp on character development and relationships, and they know how to make characters interact, and they know how to make that interesting, but they don't have a good grasp on what science fiction is necessarily, or how Star Trek and the universe of Star Trek works, and how it is big, but you can make it small in some ways, and how sometimes you have to, you know, remind people that it is huge. I don't know. I have trouble explaining what I want to say, but
I think I understand what you're saying. The impression that I get is that there doesn't seem to be, it's like, okay, I'll use Battlestar Galactica as an example. Oftentimes I was watching Battlestar Galactica and I would be like, but it was more like, where is this going? I'm extremely curious and like sitting at the edge of my seat type of, where is this going? Whereas on Discovery, and then in Battlestar Galactica, the payoffs were awesome. You know, like that question of where is this going always was answered with like an incredible like stunner, like just like, have you seen the Battlestar Galactica?
I'm gonna have to, but
podcast with your journey through Battlestar.
That would be interesting. That would be interesting. Actually, Battlestar Galactica. That's 2004, isn't it, or 5?
I think 5.
Okay.
It might have been even later, but anyways, it's just Brandon Braga, which is it's Star Trek alumni who freaking.
Yeah, well, I mean, Brandon Braga, he's doing the Orville right now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's doing the Orville, which but it doesn't do just like comparing the Orville to Battlestar Galactica or apples to oranges or whatever other cliche I could think of. But anyways, so that's how it felt. I have that same feeling in Discovery, but it's more of like, oh, what is going on? Like, it doesn't seem like anyone really knows. I feel like they're just going like, let's see where we can go, and like they don't even know where they're going. It's like, it just seems like the writers don't really have a strong idea. Like at first, we had the expectation that it was going to be a serialized show, and it seems that it is more episodic, or it just doesn't know what it wants to do with itself. And like, at the end of chapter 1, aha, WTF moment. But at the same time, I just don't feel like I feel excited about it because I'm like, oh, maybe we'll. My hope is that it'll say that Discovery was an alternate timeline, a prime line, and that now they're in the prime timeline, and all of a sudden they'll meet people wearing colorful uniforms, and they'll be like, "Who the fuck are you guys?" And then, that'll answer all of our questions. But just it's not exciting as much as I would have hoped to have been. And someone brought up a really fair point, which I completely agree with. I think it might have been you.
Well, you've been watching everything on the internet in 1 week, so you probably got to be confused.
Yeah, my mind is so like it's just like, my katra is all messed up.
Oh god.
But what someone said was like at the end was although you can take the credit for this if you want to because you probably thought this, but it was something completely unrelated to Star Trek, but basically CBS at the end, there's no way possible that CBS is going to give us the show that Star Trek should be. It's just there's too small of an audience that would actually appreciate and understand it, and it would be too esoteric. Star Trek is gone. The days of Star Trek being purely a storytelling vehicle where it's just like unafraid to tell a story and unafraid of
strongly disagree.
Pleasing the masses are possibly gone because CBS is more interested in merchandising and like paying the bills at the end of the day. They're like, this show has to make us a profit. And where there was a time where shows were not necessarily, of course, if a show failed, it would get canceled, but like you would give a show a real fair chance and you would tell bolder stories as a result of that. Like you didn't expect a show to be successful in the first half of its season. You expected it to grow into its success by season 3 or season 4. And so, I guess what I'm trying to say is that like we're in a different time. And because Star Trek has gotten so big that like what CBS is trying to do is attract a bigger audience. They want to get even bigger than it is now. And so the sacrificial lamb, as it were, is going to be crazy deep stories and crazy deep science fiction because most people are going to be like bored or change the channel when they see that. So it is sad, but that's probably what's going on.
Yeah, well, you're right in saying that is what's happening. I think you're wrong in saying that it needs to be that way.
It doesn't need to be that way.
Use I agree with that, whether you enjoy it or not, the latest Planet of the Apes movies.
Oh, I love those. Yeah.
Not only War, Dawn, and Rise, not only do they respect what Planet of the Apes is and understand the original work and the original material, but they also add so much depth and so much commentary that it just takes the movies to a whole other level. And the crazy thing is, they are still amazing action, stunning CGI films, which and just plain good science fiction. If you don't look at levels or all the depth or all the layers of a movie, you can still sit down and say, hey, look, it's a bunch of apes shooting at humans with rocket launchers and it's fucking awesome. Yeah, I think can be that, and I think that is the challenge of writing Star Trek. And I think if you're not up to the challenge of writing Star Trek, don't do it.
But the thing is, I mean, and I voiced this concern, I think. See, the thing is that Planet of the Apes probably had been in development for quite a while, and like it feels that way. It feels like a developed series, whereas Star Trek Discovery, it seems like they were like, let's try to get this shit out by the 50th anniversary. And don't get me wrong, they've done this before. They've done this before, and it was
Star Trek is very much based on rushed things, isn't it? But
it's true, they've done this before, and it's paid off for them. Star Trek 6, which I don't think you like, but I love. I love Star Trek. I don't remember. Did you say you were like, Star Trek 6? And it does have its problems.
Star Trek 6. I think that's a fair opinion. Star Trek 6.
But I love it. And I agree with you that it has flaws, but it has a lot of heart. But it is rushed. When I found that out, I was like, oh, that was an incredible feat. Well, Discovery seems
Beyond as
rushed.
well.
Like it
was intensely rushed.
Yeah. Yeah. And it feels a little rushed. You know, it's like, come on, guys, like give Star Trek some development time. The payoff will be so good. Like I guarantee you, you know what I mean? Like it would just be so good
but
if it had time to be developed, I think. And that's what I feel like. Maybe like on the show and the showrunners could never say this because they have to get their paychecks. But maybe we can say this. The show does feel underdeveloped to me. And like, you know,
it's underwhelming to me.
Yeah, but if it had like, let's say another year or even 6 months, like, you know, more.
But then they did say that they gave it more time for it to come out the way they wanted it to be. They did say that.
And I'm fully on board if chapter 2 is just, well, it can only go better. It can only get better, right? Like it's like season 1 of TNG. I keep referring back to that because season 1 of TNG was rough, and then season 2 gets better, and then season 3 is even better, and it's just the show does mature, and so I you know, I'm on board. I'm just saying it's like this is kind of like the lowest. I think. Like I used to think of Enterprise as the bottom of the barrel of my Star Trek kind of rank and file here, and so far Discovery's coming out right under Enterprise, and I did not expect that. I expected Discovery to be like, especially set where it is. I expected it to be just a lot more. Like you have so much to pick and choose, you know, so much mythology, so much like stuff to get, you know.
There's essentially 2 ways of making a television series. There's knowing exactly where you're going to start and where you're going to end and what you're doing. And then, of course, you can kind of improvise or, you know, add depth to each season that you write as you write them. But you know exactly where you're going with your television series. And there's the other way, which is kind of you write each season as it comes and you kind of try to develop that way. This should be that first way, which is there's a new Middle Earth be released on Amazon. So pre-Hobbit, pre-Lord of the Rings.
Is it the Silmarillion? Yeah. I love this. Oh my god, I love the Silmarillion.
They're already estimating a total budget for the 5 seasons of $1 billion. They already know it's going to be 5 seasons. They've hired the entire there's a team that hey
I am simply here as an observer.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm only observing. I saw you guys were on. Hello, great to meet you.
Hello
at last.
Yes. Doctor, look at what I've got on.
Oh my gosh, look at that. That's yes,
I'm in uniform.
That's great. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just okay. I'm going to listen to you guys talk as I settle here, because I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to say, and I can't wait for the upload.
Change your mic to the snowball because you're on a computer.
Oh,
mic.
Am I? Oh crap!
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's all right. Whatever. I don't really care. You're understandable. Sean was just talking about we went off in this long tangent. I'll let you see it on when we upload it. But Sean was just talking about the Hobbits or the Lord of the Rings series that's coming to Netflix, which
Amazon
and on Amazon, which is extremely well developed, has 5 seasons of. They already know where it's going, and all these things. And we were just talking about how like some shows are very well developed that way, where you know exactly where you're going to start and exactly where you're going, and other shows are kind of like fly by the seat of their pants. And Discovery should be a really well developed show, but it's not.
It's not. That's true. I agree with that.
Okay, well there you go. He agrees with the statement. Anyway, I was going to go off on a very long tangent but you summarized it very well. That's essentially where I'm going.
Please continue. Please go ahead. I'm curious to know. Am I okay now? By the way, with the mic,
you sound great now.
Okay, thanks. All right, there we go. I'm not contributing much, but go ahead.
Essentially, I don't know if you guys know how the Tolkien kind of estate works, but since J.R. Tolkien died, Christopher Tolkien's been taking care of this. But he's been releasing books, but he doesn't release them on his own. He releases them helped by a team of people, and they are essentially scholars, and they writing and what have you, and they understand how J.R. used to write, so they help him. Essentially, they are the creative team that are going to be writing and creating new lore and new canon for the TV series. That's why it cost Amazon $250 million to purchase the rights.
Wow.
Which is insane. And they already know they're going to do 5 seasons. They already know how much budget they're going. They already know what they're already going to do. All of the outlines of all of the seasons, which I mean, it's reassuring in the sense that you guys know what you're doing. You guys know where you're going with this, and you guys know what you're gonna put out. Whereas
Amazon,
Discovery kind of feels like
you can have my money, Amazon. Here you go. I don't know what.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's like okay, well, now you guys.
It's like I'm ready to go. It's like
that is the best argument. I want Amazon now.
It's true.
Let me ask you, what team? Here's a hypothetical for you guys. What team do you think would have been? I mean, because you're saying we trust obviously the Tolkien estate and the team you're just talking about. Who would have been the dream team for a new Star Trek show? What would have been a dream team in your opinion?
I'm going to be honest with you. I think personally, people that I think it should have been a mix between people that know how to make a television series, people that are already professionals, and a whole bunch of hardcore fans that don't necessarily know how it works, but they have the ideas and they have the creative skills and they have the knowledge about the universe, and they know what kind of stories they want to tell and what we as fans want to see.
I think the problem is that who are these fans? Because like where are they? Like, unfortunately, they don't have a platform, and that's because CBS suppresses all the fan productions that had any coolness to them. To
be fair, a lot of fan productions revolve around combat and battles.
It's true, you're right, but there's some really good kind of like Star Trek Continues, I think, is like my favorite fan production, right? And even they, under the new draconian CBS rules, had to, they were very political about it. They were very wonderful about it and said, oh, it's time to end our story and all this and that. But Continues was, I mean,
as we were talking about Planet of the Apes before then, how did they go and find the people that made this new Planet of the Apes trilogy so good? How did they do that? I don't know how they did it. They still did. Yeah. They found the people that knew how to make Rise, Dawn, and War absolutely amazing.
It's true.
If you can do that for Planet of the Apes, why can't you do it for Star Trek?
I think they should have pulled from the writers of the novels, like the expanded universe, so to speak. If I had to build a dream team, I think what is his name? Peter David. Am I getting it right? Am I mixing him up with Larry David from?
No. Peter David he's the guy that wrote Q Squared and
Q Squared. Yeah, Peter David would have been a good person to have on that team. I think I would have definitely somehow included the DS9, because I think DS9, as
Ira
much
Stephen
as
Bear.
Ira Stephen Bear and Brandon Braga and who am I missing?
But then you find yourself in a situation where even with that kind of dream team, is it not the production side of things that are kind of limiting them in? No, we can't do that. You have to do it this way.
Not necessarily. I mean, we don't know. This is all speculation, but I'm just saying, if I had to put together this dream team, it would be comprised of like a mixture of the people who kept the stories alive in books and the people who knew what they were doing before, like what you had kind of suggested. Who were the Uber fans to me are the writers that have been writing the novels and things like that. And I'm sure there's like really, I don't delve too deeply outside of like, like I haven't read too many of the novels. I've only read a few of the graphic novels and comic books and stuff like that. But I imagine that that's where the Star Trek fire has been kept alive. And I feel like that would have been a great resource to pull from. Much like in Doctor Who, the big finish is where Doctor Who lived while it was out, in hiatus. And part of the success of the reboot series is that they pulled, Stephen Moffat comes from that world, and so does Chris
Paul
Chibnall
Cornell,
and Paul Cornell,
and Russell T. Davies, actually, even
and Russell T. Davies. Yeah. So to me, that recipe would have been great.
But then the episode we're talking about now. Sorry, the episode we're talking about now is written by Kirsten Beyer.
I think so.
Which is that it? She writes Star Trek books. She writes Star Trek novels, and we're talking about an episode that we absolutely did not enjoy that she wrote.
This is the last one, right? The last one for the season. The one you guys are talking about.
This is the.
She's actually one of the I think she's the co-showrunner, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, they're all showrunners.
There's her like Star Trek novels, because I looked her up and I didn't see anything Star Trek. Not much Star Trek, but I didn't know if she wrote. That's something that I missed. Hold on. Okay, we're on IMDb, and it was called.
And what's her name?
Kirsten Beyer.
Kirsten Beyer. Okay, Pahva, Siva, Pahva, ha 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 ha. That episode.
Yeah, she wrote Star Trek novels. She wrote so many Voyager books.
Oh, Voyager.
Oh, okay.
That tells you everything you need to know right there.
We're not big fans of Voyager.
Okay,
although Discovery, I will say, Discovery has pushed Voyager into my personal canon now, because it
raised
because Voyager was kind of like the bottom, and now I feel like I need to give Voyager another chance, because I need to know if Discovery is truly worse than Voyager.
The most rewatched Star Trek television series worldwide on Netflix currently is Voyager. So I think everyone's kind of having the same reaction as you. Like, oh, wait a minute, let's just watch this thing.
Well, oh, that's funny.
That is pretty funny. Star Trek. So she definitely, as far as her filmography writing credits go, she only has Star Trek Discovery as far as teleplays go. So let's look her up on. Let's see here. Kirsten
Beyer. I have her here. This is not the book. But This is Star Trek Voyages of Imagination. This is kind of a guide to the Star Trek novels. And
who wrote that? That's a cool book.
Oh, this is it was compiled by Jeff Ayers. It was celebrating 40 years of Star Trek fiction. Can you believe it's 40 years of Star Trek fiction? And
yeah, so she wrote all Voyager books. And she's got 2 new ones coming out. And she seems to be focused entirely on Voyager.
Mm. So she's a she's a Star Trek
but writer. I wouldn't have picked her. I mentioned Peter David.
I agree. You didn't say her name at all, but it's just as an example. It's funny that we're talking about this because she wrote Star Trek novels and she wrote this episode, and this episode is arguably not good. Or okay, it's not that it's
like
not
Voyager.
Good. It's just.
I think.
Wait a minute. This episode is quite forgettable. Like maybe most episodes on Voyager.
So Peter David's writing credits are so numerous. He's written like a ton for the original series, which is where this takes place, the era, right? So why wouldn't you pick him? He's written Mirror Universe ones, New Frontier, which 27 of those books. I'm not sure what those are.
Yeah, those were the ones they were trying to launch. It's
a TNG
Star Trek
era.
Yeah, it's a TNG era. They were trying to launch a line of books based on an entirely new ship. So,
Oh, wow.
And the captain, I believe, is Calhoun, and it's got its fans. So, I mean, that proves that he would have been a perfect person to bring in and sort of maybe head a writing team for a new Star Trek show.
So yeah, maybe Kristen Bear. Okay, great. You know, like CBS had the right idea, but maybe they just didn't pick the right person. Apologies to you, Kristen Bear.
I mean, I will say that, you know, I'm wondering if maybe, because one thing that maybe we have to take into consideration is, you know, CBS, you know, Star Trek was housed under Paramount for a long time. And then when Star Trek was split, you know, between, okay, the movies went the way of Paramount, and the television and I believe the books go towards CBS, you know, you may have lost a lot of that institutional, let's call it institutional memory of how to run a Star Trek show. Those people may have been, I mean, Rick Berman really came from Paramount. Right. You know, the people that he brought into Star Trek were from Paramount, really, and they worked for Paramount, and then that was really the institution that they were familiar with. And now this Star Trek is obviously not utilizing, you know, it's outside of Paramount, you know.
Right. This is CBS wanting to kind of take back the reins. They were like,
right. Yeah. So you know, I mean, institutional memory is an important thing. You know, they're like, okay, well, you know, where's, like, for example, production design, what's his name, Zimmerman, who was the guy who sort of set the look for much of the Star Trek shows and the films. And, you know, I mean, I'm not saying that it has to be exactly the same, but it helps if you have people who have been running it for so long, and they can kind of like
aesthetic you want to respect.
Precisely.
Well, I mean, and the show's made like really severe kind of like design changes to the Klingons in particular, but not just like the Klingons themselves. That's one thing, but like all the ships are completely different from anything. They look like, you know,
nothing.
Yeah, mentioned nothing. Like Kazon or, you know, something. They look like nothing. Actually,
they look like something like green CGI blobs.
Yeah.
That's true.
I agree completely.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, there's none of that. Okay, so I guess we can finally get to what we liked about this episode.
Okay, so we're gonna end this very quickly with whatever was positive in this episode.
The positive things in this episode. So, the Gagarin, which is the ship in the beginning of the show.
Okay, so there's a ship on screen for a total of 2 minutes, which looks absolutely awesome.
It does. In fact, I wished that the Discovery looked like the Gagarin because it was the most era accurate ship so far.
Well, it's still not era accurate. Here's the thing. We accept it because the other ones are so far out. That's why we accept it.
Yeah.
But if this was the only ship we'd seen, we would still be mad because it's still not accurate. But we accept it because the other ones are.
But it had the right.
Yes, I very much liked it.
It had the right idea, and then that battle wasn't so bad except for the Klingon ships. But everything about it like was kind of cool.
So except for half of it.
But I like the ship scenes and like the actual like the ship taking a beating finally and like, you know, things like that. So that was kind of cool. I did like the interface that Stamets, you know, has with the spore drive. I think that's kind of a weird and cool and, you know, very.
I have a comment to say about that actually.
Star Trek. Sure.
They how should I put this? They do the alterations in his arms quite frequently as being thing as Khan.
As wait, what? Oh, they refer to it for the eugenic, like yeah, it's
they call it eugenics. They
right.
Call it, and I feel that's so forced because I his arms and the way he integrated into him, that feels nothing like and his superhuman friends at all. It just feels like they wanted to kind of name drop the eugenics and.
They did, and then this is another thing that fuels my suspicions about. I think that it's not true that the Discovery is in the prime timeline because, first of all, like throughout Star Trek,
fantasy.
When I'm right, you guys will have to.
That's a sad thing that we all deeply want to believe, but that's not true.
When I was for years and years in Star Wars, the name Coruscant, no one knew what it was how it was pronounced.
Oh God, you're gonna drag this story
because they always read it, and they always read it as Coruscant, and people agreed that it's Coruscant, but I always said it's Coruscant, and then finally I was redeemed. No, I'm just kidding.
I can actually vouch for him on that story.
Okay.
Since high school, he's been calling it Coruscant.
I
think I was pronouncing it as croissant. Yeah,
croissant. No, but anyways, because I don't know where. Again, I'd have to like kind of do some deep research. I don't know if it was in the Star Trek role-playing game or where, but there was a really good explanation as to why you never saw robots or augmented humans or things like that anywhere in Star Trek, including in The Next Generation. I mean, Data is a big deal because he's the very first android to be serving on a starship. Because up until now, other than Geordi's visor, you rarely see augmented humans in any of Star Trek. Here in Discovery, it's like all over the place. I mean, you have that one bridge crew member, Commander Arya, is it, or what is it? It's like
the one from Daft Punk.
No, that's it. That one's never come back, and I love that one. I want.
That was on the other ship.
That's on the Shanzu. But anyways,
Ariam looks like Frieza.
Right. Or she looks like Thanos' daughter from
Nebula.
Anyways, all she does is make this weird sound, and like that's it's kind of weird. Anyways, but like she's fully augmented human. They've said it, even though that's more of this reason why I think Discovery's kind of fly by the seat of their pants, because some writers said that she was an augmented alien, and then other writers said she was an augmented human, and whatever. But then my point is that you never saw this in the original series or anywhere, and the explanation, and there was actually an explanation behind it, which was that humans in the future were just capable. They just figured it out. They felt like their limitations were actually part of the experience, part of the challenge. Like, so you had to work hard, and that's the Gene Roddenberry thing, actually. Like, part of his humanist values were that like the answer doesn't lay in in myths and in deities and magic and technology. The answer to all of our problems are within us, within humans or any other human like species or whatever. So I think that's weird that like the show wouldn't know that, and they would depart so dramatically from it. So something's up. I'm just super suspicious.
Keeping your opinion in mind, I'm going to explain to you just one small interaction from Talking Trek. All right, it's explained that the director. So the first time we see Ariam, like the first episode, the director of that episode was having a look at the alien, like the different designs that were only just sketches, and he said, "That one looks so cool. I want that one on my bridge." And that's how that alien, or that's how that augmented human got on the bridge. That is the only reason why she is on that bridge. And then they said, "Oh, she looks so cool. We're going to keep her on." There's no ulterior motive behind the fact
there was nothing. There was no.
The guy that was directing that episode looked at the sketch and said, "That looks awesome. I want that." That's it.
Mr. Scott, beam me up. I'm in the wrong timeline. Anyways,
it's all based on what looks cool or not, to be honest. But
go ahead.
No, I mean, I think that just proves our point right there. Is that I don't think no one's at the wheel of this thing.
Oh, there's 19 people at the wheel. Come on.
There we go. It's
there
better
are like,
said that way.
There are like 40 producers.
You know.
Like, there are 40 producers.
There's no unifying vision on this show. There's no one like a Roddenberry, a Rick Berman, an Ira Stephen Bear, somebody, or to borrow from Star Wars, a George Lucas, a guy who was going to come in and say, no, wait a minute, it has to be this way and not that way. And they're like, but George, it looks cool. No, it's my universe. I say,
someone that makes you fight for it, basically. Fight for ideas. Like, even if you have a really good idea, you fight for it. And that's kind of like what Gene Roddenberry and Rick Berman, and I think Brian Fuller was supposed to be that promise on this show. And like,
right.
And Brian Fuller seems like a complicated man because now he's also left American Gods.
Oh wow!
So I don't know if he ends up leaving every show that he does, is he the problem, or is it that or maybe he's not the problem at all? Maybe he respects so much the original work that he gets angry with. But then again, American Gods also had 15 co-executive producers.
Right.
I haven't seen that show, but I hear it's really good.
Well, he could be another J.J. Abrams. J.J. Abrams would do the same thing. I mean, you look at Alias. He started with Alias. He was in there for 3 seasons, and boom, okay, and then he goes to the next show, and then eventually somewhere he ends up on Lost, and then
seems like an opportunist,
right?
To be honest,
exactly.
I don't very much care for J.J. Abrams, to be honest, but yeah,
I'm not a fan 100%, but I do like some of his stuff. Okay, so then the other thing I liked was that the Pahvans didn't have a particular shape. They were genuinely non-corporeal. Like, they just looked like nothing. Other than the blue color, I did like how alien they were. I also thought that it was interesting. One thing I liked was when Stamets kind of comes out of his initial confusion from jumping. He refers to Tilly as Captain Tilly, and I like that because it kind of like reaffirmed, because he is traveling dimension, possibly the 4th dimension, and he kind of can see space and time as a whole, and so it kind of suggests that Tilly will eventually achieve her goal of becoming a captain, which I kind of liked as well.
It's interesting. I hadn't considered that.
I also
I like that in itself. I just don't like the fact that they keep on hinting. They've hinted something different with Stamets on every single episode without paying any of it off ever. But I mean, even if I don't know, what was the whole deal with the mirror? There's this whole thing with the mirror.
There's a lot of these loose
this reflection goes away or something, and then it just nothing. It doesn't seem like it's one problem that is becoming bigger and bigger. It's just all these very different things going on with him that don't kind of correlate to anything. And again, we shouldn't be asking, we should be asking what universe is he seeing or what dimension is he seeing, but we still don't know whether it's a universe or a dimension, or is he seeing through time, or is it all of it? We don't really know where it's going. I don't know. It feels like if you want to drop hints like that, you should make it more and more clear to the audience as the episodes go by, whereas this just seems like, oh, we should do this. That looks cool. Oh, we should do that. That's awesome. And it's like, oh, do you guys remember that we put a mirror in that episode? Oh, shit.
It's true. It's going back to this idea of like, like there's no cohesion between. When you told me that anecdote about how they selected Arium, I was like, okay, well, that's very telling and it kind of explains a lot of these things. It's just sad because it's true. Now, if they do bring it together in some sort of brilliant way at the end of chapter 2 or whatever's coming next, I will, bow, but I'm not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it like coming together. I'm not very hopeful, but we'll see what happens.
I'm very less hateful in my reviews and videos because I mean as we talk here, we talk about speculation. We talk about episodes that came before, what might come next. In my episodes, I only really talk about that episode. And since the producers have said that we need to wait till the end of the season, because it'll all make sense. What I really doubt that, to be honest. But they have said it. So on a professional level on my channel, I'm trying to keep my cool.
Well,
Come
just
the
in general,
my full season breakdown, maybe I'll just go all out and say, this is terrible.
But Sean goes nuts on on not live TV.
Absolutely. Just start cursing at the producers.
You'll get a DDoS attack from Russia. Anyways, the needs of the many reference I thought was interesting, but it was also like,
oh, that was just come on, enough already.
They force all these things into it.
I know. I mean, between that and when this guy Leonard Nimoy reversed it in that shitty Transformers movie that he voiced, I mean, I don't know which one's worse.
What happened? Wait, what was it that happened?
They quoted, but they reversed the quote because he was playing. Leonard Nimoy actually reversed it because he was the villain in the movie, which was adding insult to injury because it was a disgusting movie. And then here in this episode, now I remember the episode you guys were talking about. Because I was just absolutely, that episode was shit, man. I just realized what episode. Yeah.
The crazy thing is, I'm going to be honest with you, it's not even an episode that I disliked. This might be even worse. It's an episode that I really just didn't give a shit about.
You're ambivalent.
At the end of the day, it wasn't interesting to watch. And the worst thing is, the next episode after it just takes away all validity from it because you need to go to the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of an episode you could almost take it out of the season, and it has no.
Oh, vey. All right, so I guess
great,
yeah.
Right?
Well, the host has run out of all of his topics. Do you guys have anything else to talk about?
No.
How does this fit into the rest of Star Trek? It doesn't.
As it stands for the moment, it doesn't.
They even
you know what?
Okay, here's the thing. Let me say something that might interest the viewers. But I'm working on a Star Trek pilot post Voyager. This is very much amateur kind of just fan production kind of thing. It's just me having fun, and I find it really fun to integrate and talk about certain elements that have happened on TNG, TOS, etc. But I use these elements to not only kind of maybe complete or add a certain something to the shows that have come before, but also to complement my show. When I think about Discovery, and I think, oh, if I would have to make this and try and kind of use elements from Discovery, it wouldn't be canon references, it would be canon reparations. I would have to fix everything that's in Discovery, not reference them like I would reference the original series, which is a very big problem.
I don't know if I already told you this, Sean, but Humbert and I, after Star Trek: The Next Generation ended, we wrote a Bible. We wrote like character descriptions, like we designed ships, everything for post Next Generation Star Trek series. That was the central character was Dr. Crusher, and it was how she got command of the Pasteur, and then like it followed the adventures of Dr. Crusher on the Pasteur.
You see, it's interesting because me, this whole project dawned after I came out of Into Darkness. My friend, my non-tricky friend said that wasn't too bad. I said it was insulting.
It's horrible.
And he says, "Oh, you'll see. People are gonna like it." And I'm like, okay. The Rotten Tomatoes, for whatever that counts, is very high. But now people, in retrospect, just look at the film and think that's a pile of trash. And it was at that moment, he said, "Well, you can't make a movie." It's like, well, okay, I'm gonna write something. I might try to make something better than that. So.
Good on you. So we have quite a opportunity now. I think that we've never had before, and I think that it's very possible that you may get your series, which would be pretty awesome. I want to be your coffee boy or whatever. I just want to be a part of it. It doesn't matter.
I'll have to have you read my pilot eventually one day once I finish it. So.
Yes, I can't wait. Yeah. So. Star Trek Discovery's penultimate mid-season finale episode. What's it called again? Civis. You say it better.
It's not the mid-season finale though. There's still one after, isn't there?
No,
there's one more. Yeah,
that's why I said penultimate.
Penultimate.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The penultimate.
What is it? Civis Pacem para Bellum.
There you go.
Parabellum.
Anyways, that episode. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a rating first. It's a 1 out of 10, and I give this episode a 4.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Whatever. I don't know.
I already know what Hubbard's gonna get, Doctor.
I don't know. When rating an episode, you have to think about everything, production, etc. But the entertainment value of it is probably the most important.
Absolutely.
And if you're completely
rewatch value, don't forget rewatch value. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're completely disinterested in the episode and it makes no sense to even watch it again, 2 maybe.
Oh yeah, there you go. 2. So
2.5.
Doctor gives it a 0.
I give it a 0.
Okay, is that a thing? Do you give everything a 0?
He gives, but I know when he's gonna do
it. I have yet to give a 0. I think I've gone as low as a 1.
I thought you gave Dead of Honor or whatever it was called, the episode.
I'm curious. How much did you give the Royale?
Did I review? I don't know if I reviewed that.
I don't know if you were on that one, but what would you have given it?
What would I have given that one?
Yeah.
I probably would have. I would have given it a 1, probably. I would have given it a 1 because there is that cool scene where they find the skeleton.
Oh yeah, that is actually.
The body. Oh wow, where is this going to go? And then it just goes nowhere. But
and then it goes to planet Pahvo.
Yeah, right. But this was
there's one thing I forgot. There's one thing I forgot to mention, but it is appropriate that we end on this note. Oh, so it averages out to, with a 0, a 4, and a 2, it averages out to a 2. So this episode gets a 2 on Starfleet Boy. But one thing I failed to mention is what has been really extraordinary and great, and it could, among the things, the music stood out to me. I actually thought that there were times where the musical cues again stood out, and I have to say that the music department on Star Trek Discovery can be saved. if you had to trash everything else, I wouldn't care, but I would say give the music department a chance.
You have to show
a good job.
You have to show
the Doctor.
Well,
I did on the private video I have on my channel with
oh yes,
you need to show them that.
Yes,
no spoilers. Just send them the link, and
I'm curious. All right.
Yes, I will send that to you after the break or after the end.
It's just after the break.
After the break. You guys are doing another one?
Oh my god!
Ideally, we should talk about the mid-season finale, but I need a break. We can talk about it next week.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question though? What,
as many as you want,
is this, the show that you're doing, the only thing that is compelling you to watch?
What you mean? The fact that I
Discovery? Yeah.
You mean because Starfleet Boy has TNG. I could just, if I didn't. Honestly, it's kind of like if it weren't Star Trek, I would have stopped watching. I have to say that honestly.
I agree.
It's only because it's Star Trek
it has
that
the
I'm
name on it.
that I'm giving it. It has a name on it, and I just have to see what happens. It's kind of like, do you know what I'm saying? I know you don't have to, but for me personally, like, because I know you've made it clear, Humbert's disengaged from.
I've disengaged from the fandom.
I have severe mental issues when it comes to watching TV shows and completionists, in the sense that, I mean, the MCU. I watch literally everything that comes out of the MCU. I just lived through the 8 most horrifying episodes of Inhumans. Granted, I watched them while doing the dishes and shit like that.
Oh, well, you're doing something constructive at least.
I am. I'm trying to at least not waste my time completely, but I need to watch it because I don't know. I've invested myself so far in some sort of universe, and they just keep adding to it, so I want to see everything that goes on in it. So Star Trek Discovery is currently maybe the Inhumans of Star Trek, but
that's a good analogy.
No, I'm being a bit harsh. I think I expected so much more. I expected so much more from Star Trek in 2017.
It's sad because we're in the golden age of television, supposedly. Like,
we are
supposed to be some sort of like.
We're in an age. We're in an age where we have Black Mirror, and we have True Detective, and we have American Crime Story, and The Expanse, and we are given Discovery. We should be given.
It should be more. It should be the thought leader. Star Trek should be the thought leader of all these kinds of shows, and it's just not. It's not. It's like, I think I said this in like a couple of episodes ago. I'm going to reiterate it. It's like, normally you watch Star Trek and you are like, oh wow, I've never seen that before, and then you watch other science fiction series and you're like, that was on Star Trek. Now it's like you're watching Star Trek and you're saying, oh, that was on Doctor Who, and that was on Battlestar Galactica, and that was on this, and it just doesn't feel like, you know.
I wish we were alive, and we had Skype and we could do all of this and hangouts when TNG came out, or even Voyager. I see that you don't necessarily enjoy Voyager, but they had out of the box concepts on these kind of shows, where it's like the political ideas, or like the way the society works, or even just the alien race that you encounter is so out of the box that becomes the immediate topic and conversation, and you're talking about something that you've never even considered before. Whereas the conversations that we're having about Discovery is always about how it doesn't fit, and how it doesn't work, and how it makes no sense, and that's just sad.
And the problem is that I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. The fact that it's a prequel, you know, once you say you're going to make a prequel to anything, you have to justify it with. I mean, let's take the example of Rogue One. Star Wars Rogue One, you know, there was, you know, we'd heard this story about, oh, you know, the guys were, you know, it fits in perfectly. Now you watch Rogue One, and it's just like you can't not help but watch that movie and go right into Star Wars, New Hope, whatever. But
and they were still able to tell an original, brand new story and all that stuff. But with Discovery, you know, you've got to give us a reason. If all of this were set after Next Generation, after DS9, after Voyager, I don't think we would have as many. I mean, obviously the show is still flawed, but a lot of the little crap that drives us nuts is that we're trying to fit this square into the hole, and it just doesn't. It's just not going to go. And you know, I give full credit to the people who made Enterprise, which, you know, they did as
at
best.
At the end of the day, it does work quite well.
It does work quite well, and it works quite well, not just in terms not just in terms of the storytelling, but from a production design point of view. You know, you look at the ships that you see there, and you say, yeah, that could turn into TOS era. You know, Constitution class. I mean, you know, like one day we can go from there. Like they made such a huge effort to make it look modern but retro enough. And you got to give him credit for that. And this show just pisses all over anything that looks like that looks like pre-TOS, I guess.
Like intentionally pisses
right.
off.
It just wants to look cool. It
Yeah.
wants to look cool and it wants to look modern. Well, then you should have said it, further in the future, or just come out and say this is in the frickin' Kelvin universe and stop driving us crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll
we're
try
the
to
fans.
I'll try to find the article and send it to you guys. One of the showrunners recently explained, because they asked him, why didn't you set this as a sequel? And they said, and essentially he says, what is that? What
Nothing. It's like a jellyfish.
Is that from Encounter and Farpoint reference?
Encounter and Farpoint reference. Yeah, go on. Sorry. Sorry.
Essentially, the guy says that he didn't have his writers do it as a sequel because the universe is too big, and he prefers to have he prefers to have parameters, and so that's why they did a prequel.
Them.
So ironic, you're not following those parameters that you set. B, it's a fucking science fiction franchise. You don't want parameters. Do whatever the hell you want.
But you know what?
Do you not trust your writers that much? Are you really not? Like, do you have no confidence in them whatsoever that they can't write something?
Think of what they could do with no limitations. It would be amazing.
My God.
Yeah, it's true.
The reason they said it as a prequel is because they wanted the selling point of going on TV and saying Kirk and Spock.
Yeah, they want to push that Kirk and Spock.
They wanted to bring in the fans as old as your dad and my dad and those people, and they also want to catch the newer fans. I know people
that only know about Kirk and Spock.
Right. I know fans at work who only watch the current movies. They don't want to watch anything else other than those 3 movies, and they think they're great. I don't know. I don't understand them, but that's Kirk and Spock to them. So they want to grab all these different, and just say, oh, look, it's 10 years before Kirk and Spock. Let's watch. Oh, Spock's dad. Oh, wow. Like they want to capitalize.
Which is a false statement, by the way.
Which
10 years before Kirk, 10 years before Spock, 10 years before the Enterprise. All 3 are false. Kirk is somewhere in Starfleet. Spock is on the Enterprise, and the Enterprise is in service. So it's all false.
It is false. True. Yes. The David Mack novel that I read that had Pike's crew aboard the Enterprise meet what's her name from Crouching Tiger on the Shinzo. Philippa, Captain Georgia. I mean, they have these lines where they're talking about, the Constitution class starship. It's they're proud of how Spartan and austere their ship is because they don't need all these fancy things that the older ships have. What? Who makes a statement like that? Yeah, we don't need all this fancy stuff. We can go. Yeah, I mean,
is that a good book, by the way?
It was okay.
Okay,
it was all right. I think it shows the promise of. I think the show actually should have been with the Shinzo and that crew.
Oh, absolutely. The show should have been Giorgio versus Chrysobis Takuvma. That's what the show should have been.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Or they should have just made a Kelvin timeline movie with Giorgio and Takuvma. That would have been epic.
There we go. Yeah, I would have taken that over this for sure.
Well, gentlemen,
so today was an interesting.
This was really good. It's great after 3 weeks to come back and like fully engage. I look forward to our next discussion. I look forward to getting back to our Star Trek: The Next Generation discussions, which Sean, I invite you to. I've already have, but you're of course invited to those too. It's a lot of fun. What's that?
If I can make it, I will.
Excellent. All right, gentlemen, thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next time, and live long and prosper. Ooh, that was new.